Thank you for joining us for The Drive Back, the movie podcast where we imitate our favorite thing to do after a movie, which is to talk about it on the ride home. I'm Garrett, and of course, I'm joined by my good friend and co host, Adrian.
Hey there.
And today we have another double feature for you, the type of episode where each of us picks a movie, we watch them both, and review them both here with you. And today we've picked two. I would say they have some animation in common, but other than that, they're pretty different. So, all of this and more coming up on the drive back. Alrighty, so two films that share animation in common, but other than that, really have nothing else
Yeah.
in common, except for maybe some humor, but that's about it. But let's go ahead. We're going to dive first into your pick this week, which is Robots. Released in 2005, it was directed by Chris Wedge and Carlos Saldana and stars Ewan McGregor, Robin Williams, and Halle Berry. In a robot world, a young, idealistic inventor travels to the big city to join his inspiration's company, only to find himself opposing its sinister new management. So, Adrian, you picked this movie. Why don't you go ahead and talk a little bit why maybe you chose it? Maybe you just watched it on a whim. I don't know what your story behind it is.
Yeah, I actually don't know why I picked it either. I think I saw it when it came out in 2005. And then it's just kind of one of those weird, obscure memories of a film that I had that's come up in my life more than I think it should have.
Mm-hmm.
But so it was just kind of one of those things I wanted to rewatch to see what it was all about because I had no idea what the plot was anymore. I had completely forgotten it except for like some of the visuals. So yeah, I wanted to rewatch it.
Yeah, same thing. I pretty much watched this when it came out. My family and I actually owned it. I think we still own it on DVD somewhere.
Impressive.
It was
That'll be your holy grail in your collection video.
right. I don't have it here, but I mean, it was one we enjoyed when I was a kid. So I had nostalgic feelings about it, and I had a lot of positive memories. And I guess we'll address whether or not it held up for both of us
Sure.
as we get in here. Let's go ahead and do some general thoughts before we get into some spoilers. What are your general thoughts before we talk about it?
I thought this was decently good. It's definitely got an era of humor to it that has since gone stale. I would say the jokes are pretty tired. But just the whole world they created, filled with all these mechanical things and contraptions and thingamajigs, is still pretty fascinating to watch. I didn't find myself bored at any point in this movie, even if it was kind of a slower scene. I was always interested by the background or the environment or some contraption they were working on. I found it really, really interesting and enjoyable to watch.
Yeah, I was going back and forth on this and how I felt, and I think that there are parts of it that hold up really well. Primarily the look of it. I think it's the action. I would say most of the visuals actually hold up surprisingly well.
Yeah,
I mean, the fact that they're robot people makes it so that janky animations look like it's supposed to be part of it. And I think that that's really smart. Also, a lot of the texture quality of different items
hmm
looks incredible still to this day, almost 16 years later. Um, and the cast in this is awesome. It's a huge cast with so many
massive.
people. But kind of along the lines of what you were saying, where there's so much stuff in the background to kind of catch your eye, and I think there's a lot of decent stuff they throw in to catch your eye to distract you from a very formulaic story,
Yeah.
and kind of just by the numbers, animated family film. Um,
Yeah, but I think that's kind of what makes this movie so unique is that it is very formulaic, but it doesn't feel that way. While watching it, to me at least, I felt that there was enough going on, and it was kind of the generic story was packaged in such a way that just made it interesting from beginning to end for me. And I think it kind of masked what it truly was, at least in my opinion.
mhm.
And I think a lot of people could get lost in all the visuals and kind of the costume that the story's in.
Yeah, I think there. I mean, yeah, at the time, I would say there's probably enough here for adults as well as kids. But
Yeah.
I mean, I would say now it's kind of tired for both. I would say.
Yeah.
But let's go ahead and dive a little bit deeper into it. So we're going to go ahead and post a spoiler warning for a 16-year-old animated movie that probably none of you have ever seen, or at least you may have heard of. But let's go ahead and start with some positives. We both said that the world for this is very unique, and it's what helps it to stand out. Is there anything specifically that you'd like to highlight with that?
Yeah, I mean, there's literally so much you could point out.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I found really interesting was the contraption when they arrived to the city.
Mm-hmm.
I forget the city's name, Gear Town. That's where he's from.
I think it's called Robot City.
Yeah, super creative.
Yeah.
But when they arrive, there's this weird, almost like a Rupert Goldberg machine in how they travel, which makes no sense in reality. But it is really fun to watch, and just seeing all the contraptions and the animation of the springs squeezing together and then launching apart. I found that really just visually entertaining.
Yeah, and again, like I think I was actually watching it while we were in an Xbox party together, and I was like, this makes no physical sense.
Yeah, there's one part where they have to, the ball that they're sitting in, it's literally like they are in this vehicle. It's this little sphere, and the thing launches them, and they go through 2 or 3 spinning circles that are this big, like just as big as the ball. And why would you even introduce that margin of error at all? Like, who designed and said, you know what, it's not dangerous enough?
Well, I'll tell you who designed it. It was Big Weld, the guy, and it's a reflection of his personality, which
Absolutely.
We'll get to his performance in a bit. But yeah, I mean, this movie, on the plus side, yes, its world is definitely, it's so unique. I mean, like there's a visual gag which I actually laughed out loud at. When it was like the morning, like the next morning after the first night there, and this guy's driving his car down the street and it stops, and he's like, "Oh darn!" And he has to get out and crank it like a toy, and the spring wounds tighter and goes. I thought that was actually pretty funny.
Then there was another vehicle that did like a slinky maneuver that went 1 foot over the other in a big slinky. And it's like, you're robots. Cars are robots. You can just have cars.
Yeah, it's quirky enough that it stands out, and that's the important thing.
Yeah, exactly.
But let's go ahead and get on to another positive, besides the world building, besides the visual look, the cast of this movie.
Yeah.
Now, some of the performances are a little, I would say, specifically, I would say Amanda Bynes was kind of, who plays, I think, the yellow
girl.
robot.
Yeah.
I forget her name. She was,
Yeah.
I think they probably threw her in there because she was popular on Nickelodeon at the time or something.
Yeah.
But I mean, Ewan McGregor does pretty well. I mean, he sells the believability part. I mean, he sounds a little bit older than the character would be. I guess the character's supposed to be like 18 or something like that.
Sure.
But he's fine. Robin Williams is Robin Williams, and there's literally no way you could fault Robin Williams for being Robin Williams.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of parts of this movie that were almost written where you could tell that they just said, you literally have 30 seconds to just improv. And he'll just say like joke after joke in the way that Robin Williams did. He would just riff saying quip after quip after quote after quote. And it was kind of written around his talent in certain parts. You could definitely tell.
Yeah, and you could tell that it was kind of like a big push for the studio to have him be a side guest. And among others, which we'll get to. I mean, I would say the 2 villain characters, I think Ratchet and his mother, Greg Kinnear does a pretty good job of playing a comedic villain. I would say he's fine. I don't know who plays the mother off the top of my head. I don't have any kind of IMDb pulled up or anything.
I don't either.
But I do want to highlight specifically Mel Brooks, who plays Big Weld in this movie. And we've had Mel Brooks on the podcast before. We covered Blazing Saddles. He was the director of it. Yeah, we interviewed him. He was a sly ghost in one of the corners.
If you missed that episode, go back. It's in there somewhere. You just got to listen to enough, and you'll find it.
I like it. I thought he was actually probably the best part of the cast in this movie. I feel like Mel Brooks as a person embodies the warm kind of grandpa you always want that you don't have kind of a mentality, especially in this movie. And it's weird to see him in more of a kid-friendly family movie as opposed to like his usual work.
Sure.
But I really enjoyed his performance in this movie. I feel like everyone else does a good job. I would say no one else does an exemplary job, except for Mel Brooks, in my opinion. What do you think?
I thought Robin Williams did pretty good. I would say, I think you're right in saying that it wasn't necessarily like pristine, but I think that they definitely accommodated to his humor. So some of those parts were pretty good. But it was definitely a lot of just, it felt improvised. And kind of a lot of it, yeah, I guess I would agree if that's the question. Yeah, I think most of them kind of were just good.
Good, but not great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Enough to not distract.
Yeah.
Like I definitely didn't find myself being pulled out going, "Whoa, that person, what is that line?" or things like that.
Exactly. I feel like there was nothing in this movie where no one in this movie was like, that doesn't sound right. That
Yeah.
doesn't sound good. Like it just everything gelled, which was nice. So,
I was also really impressed with, I'm just thinking about it now, but whoever did the Foley work for this movie, I can't imagine that was easy with so many springs, gears, beeps, gizmos, and stuff going on. I can't imagine that was easy. And again, it doesn't distract from the movie at all. Everything sounds like it belongs in this world.
yeah, definitely. And that's part of the world building, right? Like it kind of where sound design goes hand in hand with the creative aspect. So,
Yeah.
but let's go ahead and talk some negatives, some critiques of this film. We kind of talked about it in the beginning that this film feels dated, both in its humor and I would say a lot of its references as well.
Sure.
I mean, there's a moment during the final battle scene when Robin Williams just breaks into Britney Spears,
Yeah.
and it's a very cringy, bad moment. Like,
I didn't think it was cringy, but it definitely, it wasn't the best, but it also made me think about how movies are not made the same anymore.
yeah, for the better,
And
I would say.
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think when I was a kid, I would have thought that was really funny. I probably did. Like, I probably thought that was a good bit. And to me, movies take themselves so seriously now that I kind of miss that. Like, yeah, we put a Britney Spears section in because why not? I feel
Yeah,
like nowadays executives would be like, no, and the reviewers would say, no way you can put that in.
yeah.
And it kind of made me more nostalgic. So I kind of liked that it was in there because it made me feel like I was watching something special.
That's fair. I mean, it is dated, but kind of if it makes you feel good, then go right ahead.
I did want to mention something about the last battle, though.
Sure.
I really thought when Amanda Bynes' character opens up the little hole and she's like, "Am I too late for the butt kicking or whatever?" And then the whole thing falls down. And there's an army. I really want someone, if anybody listens to this and has the ability to do this, please sync the final scene of Robots from 2005 to the Avengers Endgame Portals scene and music. And I promise you, it will line up almost perfectly.
Not too late for the butt whooping.
Yeah, instead of on your left, it would be. Did I miss it? And
Or
then
just,
as all the wall falls down.
I just imagine Doctor Strange going, "Is that everyone?" And then just
Yeah, exactly. And then literally, it even has the scene where it flashes to Ratchet, and it's him zoomed in on his face, and then it flashes to Cap, or it flashes to oh my gosh, to Rodney, and then it zooms out, and you see the armies run at each other. It's almost identical.
You could make it work if someone else can do it.
It's. I think you'd go viral for sure with that because it's so obscure and so needed in this day and age.
But let's go ahead and get into some of the more, I guess, not so good, dated kind of stuff. A lot of it comes down to the style of humor. I think for me, a lot of like the reference stuff. I mean, like it's funny when the little robot that Rodney makes fights the Madame Gasket and like their pipes are making a lightsaber sound. That's funny and all. But like a completely unnecessary throwaway gag where the character who doesn't have a voice puts in the voice box and starts talking like Darth Vader, which completely just takes you away from the moment, and you're just like, okay, that was unnecessary. Like,
and I think that was for the parents at the time.
yeah,
I think it was
even
more
kids
like,
would get it.
yeah, I think a lot of those things were people that were taking their kids, and then it's like, oh, but here's the thing, like we acknowledge you, kind of thing. But yeah, it was a little tired.
I don't know. There's a lot. I'm struggling to think of any exact examples of the datedness of this movie. I think it's almost just a general feeling over the entire movie, where it kind of harkens back to the early 2000s style of animation. I would say,
Sure.
I think Ice Age came out before this, and it was the same studio, and that movie I feel holds up better than this one.
I would agree. I think this one definitely used a different animation style.
Yeah.
than Ice Age did, but I keep jumping back to positives because I thought this movie was pretty fun. But the dominoes scene was pretty impressive as well from an animation standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was pretty detailed. Where I mean, just rendering all of those individual dominoes. I don't know what the trick was. I'm sure there's something, but there were scenes that do hold up from animation, and then there's a lot of scenes, kind of like you mentioned, that it doesn't. I don't want to say it like drops to the point where it breaks immersion, but you just can tell that it's an older movie just immediately.
Yeah, there's like now that I've seen videos on visual effects and animation and things like that, and been a video gamer for some time, you can notice things like when objects clip into each other. You
Yeah,
can notice when things like that. Like there's a moment when you first meet the villain Ratchet, and he's in the corporate meeting, and there's the one guy that's so nervous he's doing the squeak toy thing, and you can
yeah,
actually see his fingers clipping into the toy.
yeah.
Little things like that, which were our technical limitations of the time, absolutely, but it's just it adds to the dated feel of the film,
Sure.
which is it's a big negative for me because a lot of the time films can be old, but they can still feel relevant and good. Think movies like Modern Times with Charlie Chaplin, or Casablanca, or take your
Sure.
pick, any of the film noirs from the 50s. They
I
still
think
feel
that
good to this day. They don't feel dated, whereas this feels dated and it's not even that old.
I'm interested though. Does feeling dated make is that a negative term?
Um, I think when used in this context, yes, for me
Okay.
at least, yeah. When I can tell when I can tell its age, and it hasn't like, you know, really aged well. Like a lot of the special effects in the original Star Wars movies hold up better than some of the visual effects here,
Sure.
and it doesn't. And again, it doesn't feel dated. Feeling being old and feeling dated are nothing the same.
Yeah.
Right? So that's just where I kind of stand with this film. Not that it takes away from any kind of like funniness or anything like that. It's just it feels dated.
Sure. Yeah, this definitely feels like a childhood movie. Like if you are anywhere like in the realm of like mid 20s or early 20s or anything, this feels like a movie that you watched as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And like I mean you can just tell. It's almost like if you wanted to show someone, they could immediately tell how old this movie was just based on the opening credit sequence.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So, but anything else you want to chat about before we move on to our second film? Anything else
No,
you want to highlight?
no, I think this movie was pretty interesting. There were a lot of little tidbits like the domino scene, and even though the story was a little cookie cutter, I thought there were some nice kind of caveats to it here and there, little nods or slight breakaways, and then it would fall back in line. Um, I did like the story of kind of the of him leaving his father behind, trying to make him proud, and that kind of all tying together at the end, where he actually was able to bring Big Weld to meet his dad, and his dad gave him all new parts.
Mm-hmm.
Which also brought me to the question: do robots just live forever in this movie?
They don't want you to think about those things.
Because they just gave his dad, who was clearly dying earlier in the film, an entire new
Yeah.
body.
They're like, here you go, and here's an instrument. Let's go ahead and have a musical moment.
Also, something super. This might be like an Easter egg, or not even Easter egg, but like a whoopsies. But the dad is a dishwasher, and the dishwasher is part of his body, and that's what's going wrong. Like every time he's sick, he has to open up the dishwasher, and they're like tinkering. But when he quits his job, he just takes the dishwasher off of his body and gives it to the boss. So, like, what was wrong? Why couldn't he? Why was
I
that
don't know.
affecting his body? It was so.
Maybe
There was some interesting stuff.
I would say maybe it's a metaphor for work kills you and enjoy your time.
Oh, oh, and then when he quits, he gets rid of that weight or that
Yeah,
ailment.
but I
Ailment.
think we're reading way too into it.
I don't think
Um,
so. I'd like to talk. No, I'm just kidding.
um, I want the other thing I want to mention too is that I mean obviously this is a kids movie. I can't fault it too much for convenience because this movie feels very convenient. You know, a lot of things are
Sure.
handed to the main character. Again, it's a kids movie. I can't fault it for that. They have to make it an hour and a half so the kids' attention spans don't go out the window and they start running around the theater. But there's just a couple moments where I'm like, it's kind of stretching the line. Especially like, oh, here's all new parts again, and then Rodney's going to be the successor for Big Weld Industries or whatever. And so it feels a little force-fed, but again, I can't complain about it. And it doesn't
Yeah,
affect my score.
and I think
Um,
that's also because it's a kids movie and they want kids to feel like the whole message of the movie is you can do anything.
yeah,
And so I think tying it off with and like you did all this and now you get your reward. I think that was definitely the message they were trying to send.
exactly, yeah. And I think, the storyline of him leaving his parents is, while it is a formulaic story, I don't think it's handled awfully here.
No,
Like I said, there's
I don't
actually
think
some
so.
pretty good words of wisdom that are shared, which are actually, I would say, somewhat inspirational. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, let's go ahead and wrap this up, and we'll go ahead and talk about our second film today, which I'm excited to see because
Are
both
we
of
not
us,
giving scores?
we are. That's why I'm getting there.
Oh, oh,
I'm
oh,
getting.
oh, oh, oh.
You're chomping
Please
at the bit.
forgive. Please forgive
You
me.
sound so excited, Adrian. What's your score for Robots?
I gave this movie a 63.
Okay.
That might sound lower than how excitedly I talked about it, but this movie is good. I don't think it's one you need to run out and go watch immediately. If you're looking for something fun, I'm sure there's a lot of fun drinking games you could make out of this movie or some sort of like fun you could have with it. But it definitely is dated, and in this term, I would say that is a slightly negative term. It's not all bad though. Some of the datedness has a charm to it.
Yeah.
And this movie definitely stands on its own with its own unique level of that charm. And I think it stands apart from a lot of movies of the 2005s, early 2010s. I think it definitely stands on its own. And I think if you're kind of looking for something in that range, then I would go watch it. But it definitely, I don't think it's like a 10. It's obviously not a 10 out of 10, like go buy the DVD like Garrett did.
Like my family did back in 2005.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'll cut right to the chase. I gave it a 56.
Right around.
I mean, I have those nostalgic memories of it. I was originally much harsher on it, but then I kind of realized it is better than I was giving it credit for. Maybe I was just being too cynical when I was originally thinking what I was going to score. But yeah, 56. I feel like it's a fun enough movie that it's not Pixar, it's not Disney. So if you're looking for an animated film for your kids to watch that you want to watch as well, or if you just want to watch one by yourself,
Yeah,
you could do a lot worse. And I think that
totally.
the fact that it's not Pixar is a little bit of a breath of fresh air. They can do some more risky humor here and there. And this one actually has some pretty adult jokes in it too,
Yeah.
so which are pretty funny. But those are probably the jokes that hold up the best, which is interesting.
Which is
Um,
funny because I think those are always the jokes that hold up the best for some reason.
yeah, for some weird reason.
We're always
Um,
like, haha, inappropriate.
They'd get fired now. Let's go ahead and move on to our second film, which was my choice, which is Space Jam. Released in 1996, it was directed by Joe Pytka and stars Michael Jordan, Bill Murray, and Wayne Knight. In a desperate attempt to win a basketball match and earn their freedom, the Looney Tunes seek the aid of retired basketball champion Michael Jordan. Now, I guess this was my pick, so I'll go ahead and share my story first. I had never seen this movie. In all the years of my existence, I had never watched Space Jam. I was never into basketball. I didn't know who Michael Jordan was till I was in high school. That's just the way that my upbringing was. So I've been hyped up for years on this movie. Everyone's like, "Oh, it's so good, because they watched it when they were kids." And I'm not gonna lie, and I'll say it right now: a huge positive for this movie is the theme song. It is a major jam, no pun intended. It's pretty sweet, and there's a awesome video out there. If you like the video game series Dark Souls, someone remixed it with the theme for the hardest boss in the game, and it is incredible.
Oh, wow.
But I am sad to say that I don't think it holds up to any of the hype. I think it is a pretty dated movie. Even though it is fun, it's not something I think I would ever like, I gotta watch it again. What about you?
Yeah, so I had seen it when I was a kid, and I knew I knew the plot, and I knew what well, without spoilers, I knew kind of what happened. And I had seen it enough to kind of remember, but I definitely didn't remember all the little details or any of the music or anything like that. So this was, I would say this was like my first kind of time watching it for real. Like first time I'll remember it, all of it and everything like that. And I have the absolute opposite reaction. I thought this movie was very fun. I thought this movie had a lot of yeah, it's super awkward and it's super dated, but I think this movie has way more charm than Robots does in terms of the styling of it and just kind of the quirkiness. There were so many times where it just had me laughing because of how absurd what was on screen was. So yeah, I actually found myself enjoying it a lot.
All right, well, let's go ahead and dive into some spoilers for Space Jam. Most of our listeners have probably already seen this movie, but if you have not, it is available to stream on HBO Max because the sequel is coming to HBO Max and theaters.
A couple weeks, right? A couple weeks, I think.
It's a couple weeks, yeah.
Yeah.
But let's go ahead and talk spoilers for Space Jam. I'm actually interested because we're both seeming to be on opposite sides of the fence on this one. I'm interested to see what you thought, was what made this movie so fun for you. You care to elaborate?
Yeah, are we sticking spoiler free right now?
No, we're going full spoilers.
Full spoilers. Okay. I mean, honestly, it comes down to even just the end where Michael Jordan comes back to the baseball game in the spaceship, and I believe I can fly plays while they were like, just that kind of stuff was so funny to me. The CGI or the animation and stuff isn't the best, but it does its job. I mean, you understand what's happening. I think the awkwardness of the fact that Michael Jordan wasn't talking to anyone and he's just not a good actor. So you can just obviously tell that they were like, act scared. And he's like he does some weird facial reaction. I just thought all that stuff to me added to it. I don't think I would have liked it, and I don't think I did because I obviously don't really remember it from a kid, but I don't think I would have liked this movie when it came out because I don't think it rocked the world then, at least for me. But watching it from today's world, it was like a breath of fresh air of, again, movies don't get made like this anymore. If this movie was
sequel coming out.
Well, but I guarantee you it's not going to have the same charm. At least I really hope it does, but I think this movie is how the Tom and Jerry movie should have been formulated after. When they brought animated characters into the real world in Tom and Jerry, and I think bringing the real characters into the animated world did a lot better job of allowing them more flexibility, and especially in animating, because you don't have to do as much work as just putting someone into the shot. But I thought a lot of the little bits and stuff and the bad acting, I thought it really made it kind of like a homey movie. It felt very warm and like I was being shown someone's home film, and I really like that.
I'm actually going to agree with you on the fact that it does feel warm. It's a nice film to just put on, and I think a lot more of my negativity is stemming from the fact that this movie was so hyped up for so long by so many people, and honestly, I think this is my version of the someone who didn't watch Star Wars as a kid and doesn't like it because they watched it as an adult. I think if I was into basketball as a kid, if I knew who all these people were, and I watched this movie, I probably would have loved it. And that's probably the reason why I don't. And I don't identify with it. I'd say I definitely identify with the Looney Tunes characters. I've watched them since I was a kid. I know them. Which, a big negative for this movie is while the voice actors that play them are good voice actors outside of this movie, they do not sound like the regular Looney Tunes, and it's a little apparent. They do sound like impersonators. They don't sound like the actual characters.
Are they not the real characters?
No.
Oh, interesting.
Well, they haven't been played. The original voice actor was Mel Blanc, who did it back in the 40s. He's not alive.
Yeah.
So, they had to get voice actors to impersonate. And they don't sound awful, but they sound off. And it kind of sours the experience as someone who watched Looney Tunes for their entire life.
Sure.
I'm glad to say that the new Space Jam, they do sound pretty close, which is really, really good. Also, I'm actually going to say this is not a negative that I thought was going to be a negative. Michael Jordan is not bad in this movie.
No, he's not.
He's fine. He's a basketball player, not an actor, and he's playing himself. It's totally fine. The other basketball players, they're really bad.
Yeah, it's so bad.
Oh man, our talent's gone missing. Whatever are we going to do about it? It's so.
And there was even the scene where they were all supposed to at the end when Michael Jordan pulls out the basketball to give it all back, and you can tell the direction was big glowing orb gets pulled out of bag because they all step back as if it's the most blinding thing they've ever seen, and it's just a slightly glowing basketball. Like just even all their acting is it's like they're all sitting in the circle, and he's like, "Oh well, I guess what are we gonna do? We've tried everything." And then they go to the sidekick, and it's just so awkward. Their whole
And the psychic
conversation is
tells them the
weird.
truth, and they're like, "That's so stupid." It's so absurd. Oh man, it's funny yet it's absurd. But let's go ahead and talk performances besides Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan obviously did fine enough. Wayne Knight, who plays his PR agent in this,
Yeah.
Wayne Knight, very well known from Seinfeld and played Dennis Nedry in Jurassic Park. Is cringy in this movie, but that's the way the character is supposed to be.
Yeah.
He's supposed to be that that like eager to impress intern type character.
Yeah, he's fine.
And he's fine. Bill Murray, and I'm saying this right now, right?
I'm here.
Bill Murray, Mel Brooks, and Robin Williams are the three comedic actors and comedic talents that can do no wrong. I think Bill Murray is probably the best part of this movie, and it's just because he's playing himself.
Yeah.
He's like, I want to go pro one day for basketball, and then he's like, no, this is my one game. I'm retiring.
And then afterwards, he's like, that could have been me. And they just tell him to shut up. And then he goes, yeah, you're right. But I also loved that break of the fourth wall when he gets asked, like, how did you get here? And he goes, oh, well, I just know the recruiting agent. So I just use a Keemster and I got over here.
No, I thought you said he knows the producers or something like that.
Yeah, the producers or something.
Yeah.
And he just, like, he's talking about the actual movie, about why he's in the movie.
It's ridiculous, and I love it. Everyone else in this movie, though, is just like side character, guest, actors, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I would say all the stuff that happens with Michael Jordan and his like family,
yeah,
is all throwaway. Like, I don't it.
That's character building for him, but it doesn't really matter.
There's this whole pointless thing where Bugs and Daffy meet his kids, and they're like, "Be quiet about it," and it literally makes no difference until the end of the movie when Michael Jordan steps out of a spaceship, and I Believe I Can Fly starts playing, and his kids are like, "Oh, he came from his other game," and the wife's like, "What?"
And they're like,
"That's it."
Yeah.
Why would you even talk about it if you're going to go, shh, it's stupid.
Yeah.
There are also several, if you look very carefully, there are several pieces of footage, specifically the baseball stuff, where there's people like walking to and from like, the field and stuff like that, where the footage like goes like this, like they're walking out, and then it goes back. They actually rolled back the footage to extend it.
While he's stepping out of the ship?
No, before he arrives, there's a part where they're all waiting for him at the baseball field, and there's a part where some people are walking out onto the field, and then like after like they get to a certain point, they start moving backwards because the footage starts reversing for like maybe a second, and it's totally bad because they're just reversing the footage to try and extend it out that extra second or whatever for whatever reason.
How funny! I didn't notice that. That's really funny.
There's a couple instances of it. But let's go ahead and talk the actual Looney Tunes characters themselves in this movie. Besides the voice performances. The animation was pretty decent, I would say.
Yeah, I think it was good.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely decent. I think there's some weird CG things going on with Wayne Knight and Michael Jordan. Like, when Michael Jordan's turned into a ball, it looks really bad.
Yeah, well, it's almost like even when Michael Jordan goes to dunk for the last shot and they stretch his arm out, it literally looks like someone in Photoshop just like clicked warp and then just dragged his arm out and then like rotoed it into the like he doesn't move, but his arm just like his hand comes down like it's on a compass and just like dunks.
Human bones don't move like that.
Yeah. If you could tell, like this was definitely, I don't know what the forefront of animation was, but this feels like it was pushing a lot of technology. Yeah. In terms of like putting someone in an animated world like that. I feel like that was difficult at the time. Nowadays we have the luxury where this whole movie could be made by someone by themselves at home. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I do want to point out something though, that this movie probably was groundbreaking at the time.
Yeah.
But if Who Framed Roger Rabbit didn't exist, this would have looked even better. But
I would
agree.
agree.
The fact that Who Framed Roger Rabbit did it first with live action and animation together, and it looked a lot better, kind of undersells this movie a little bit for me.
I would agree. I think this movie definitely went for the Looney Tunes look, just through and through. I think there's even some shaders thrown over Michael Jordan,
Yeah.
and just to make him look more cartoonish, even though he's the real person, like just slightly, so that he blends in more. But with all I thought the interactions between all the Looney Tunes characters was good. I thought the banter was pretty fun. They felt like the characters. They felt like how the personalities were, which is pretty, I guess, easy to nail, especially if you've watched the show. But I mean, that all felt good to me. I didn't feel like that was outrightly negative.
There's also really good references to a lot of side characters that I remember
Yeah.
from old episodes, like the two gangsters that Bugs Bunny deals with in one of the episodes were there,
Yeah.
and I was like,
Yeah.
"Wow, holy cow!"
Yeah.
But there is a big elephant in the room that I want to discuss because it's it's kind of a meme, and it's a reason why this movie loses some points with me, and it has nothing to do with the movie itself. It's Lola Bunny. The fact that they sex her up in this movie, and I'm not making any kind of comments like, oh, they shouldn't sex her up, anything, like whatever, like that's beside the point. This movie is responsible for converting people into furries because of that character, and I don't like it.
I was more focused on the fact that Big Chungus was definitely in this film in a different way. Uh, when they take the water and Bugs Bunny like bulks up, I was like, that is Big Chungus.
That's no, that's big hunkus.
Yeah, yeah, there you go. But like I mean that literally anytime Bugs Bunny was on screen, all I could picture was Big Chungus.
If there's no reference to Big Chungus in the next Space Jam movie,
Oh, there has to
I'm
be.
going to be upset.
Yeah, he's got to eat like a ton of carrots and get really big or something.
I actually went back and watched that episode that night.
Oh, really?
When he's like, and he was like, oh, big. It's so good. But I think we're kind of, padding for time at this point. Is there anything else you want to discuss about Space Jam? Anything else you want to bring up?
No, I think the acting overall was good. I think the animation was serviceable, or the acting was okay. I mean, it works for what the movie is. It's not like it's
Yeah.
going to win any awards or anything. The animation was good. I personally found like the overuse of "I Believe I Can Fly" pretty fun. I feel like that's a meme that I would do if I was in charge of a movie. I'd just throw that in wherever I could because it's a great song. Um, and maybe that's why I like this movie because I feel like it had a lot of bits that I would have put in a movie if I was in. If someone was like, make a campy movie that will stand the test of time by fans like a cult following, those are all the bits that I would have put in to make that happen. So that's probably why it kind of lined up maybe a little more with my humor. But yeah, I thought it was good.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and dive into some general thoughts, or not, general final thoughts, I guess, before we move on to scores. Um, I think this movie is fun, and I think for the time it was a big hit. It didn't quite stick the landing with me. I'm not someone who's a sports fan. I'm not someone who's a fan of Michael Jordan. I don't know these basketball players, but I know the Looney Tunes, and they're serviceable here. I ended up giving the movie a 48. Not a bad score. I mean, if you look at the scoring that we've done before, 48 isn't necessarily bad. It's just something that didn't stick with me. And it's not something I'll really watch again. I will watch New Legacy when it comes out, and hopefully it's better. Which it's got some. It's really taking some major hints from Ready Player One, so we'll see how that works out. But that's pretty much it for me. It just didn't stick the landing with me. It didn't make the shot, if you, so to speak.
Sure.
What do you got for me, Adrian? What did you give it?
Yeah, I gave this movie an 83. Again, all my movies are not rated next to each other, so you can't compare this to any of my other ratings. This is how
Same here.
it grades against its own.
Mhm.
Yeah, I thought, like I've said, I just thought it was fun. I thought it felt very warm. It felt familiar, even though I didn't remember watching it. It just felt safe. It didn't do anything crazy. I wasn't like blown away by any plot twists. It was just a nice, comfortable movie. And maybe it's also that just like that's really needed in times that we're experiencing right now. It was just nice to watch a movie that just felt good all the way around. Like I was not maybe that's why it was so nice that I wasn't overly critical of it. I was passively letting the movie happen to me, which I think is it's a good note that movies can still do that. I tend to be a little critical of movies, and I like that this one kind of made me not. So that's why I gave it an 83.
Awesome. Well, that's going to bring us to an end for this double feature for Space Jam and Robots. Quite the double feature indeed. Remember, since we are here on YouTube and on all the podcasting apps, to follow, like, subscribe, all what's necessary to make sure you stay in touch with the podcast or any of the videos we make now. Remember, if you're listening to us, you can find us on YouTube under the Drive Back Podcast, where we have, actually, we just put out this week at the time of recording, our first ever video-only review for Godzilla vs. Kong. The spoiler discussion will be up as well in time. So make sure you go to YouTube and go subscribe over there so you can see video-only content, because as we said, we are not going to be doing now streamings anymore. We're not going to be doing new releases on the podcast. Those are going to be left for video content only. So, and make sure you follow us on social media for the Drive Back, and also Adrian and I. Our information is down below. We can get news on what's coming, and if we ever do anything individually. I started up my review blog again, which I posted for Godzilla vs. Kong, and look forward to anything else that we watch here on the podcast that I feel I want to actually take the time to write about. I'm sure Adrian's got some stuff that he's want to put out there too. So, anything you got, Adrian, to add?
No, I think that's good. Just make sure to follow us. We love interacting with you guys. We've gotten a slight increase in all the people talking to us. So if you feel like chatting, or if you even if you hated what I said or Garrett said, or you loved it, just let us know. We'd love to get roasted by you, and we'd love to make some new friends as well. And the important thing to remember, as always, that we say is movies are subjective. So our opinions should always be taken with a grain of salt. And you should just go watch any movie that you're interested in. Because nobody can tell you what you will and will not like. I've had reviewers in the past that I very much aligned with, and they have been vastly wrong on many of film. So just if you think you're going to want to see a movie, just go see it. You'll rarely regret it. And in the situations that you do, you formed your own opinion, which is also a good thing.
Exactly. And you're joining us on this film journey of discovery and critique. So, but that's going to bring us to an end of the episode. Adrian, what do we always like to say?
Go watch a movie. Maybe you could fall down an interdimensional wormhole into Looney Tunes land and watch a good flick down there.
There you go. But thank you for joining us for the Drive Back. We will see you in the car ride on the way home next time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Drive Back. Make sure to be on the lookout for new episodes every Monday, and make sure to follow us on social media.